he kai tohu mō wetiri, called David Hanna toko wingoa. So I'm part of the Inspiring Communities team, part of the Child Rich Community Network, and I just want to mihi to Louise, who may be in here, but Louise, most of you will know Louise, who's been the host for the Child Rich Community Network. So I'm sort of stepping in for Louise. She's having a bit of a space, and so kia ora, Louise. Hope you're having the rest that you need to have, and I hear you're going on a bit of a hikoi. So all the best for your travels. And I'm your host this morning, and it's really good to share this conversation with Kiri and with Carla and with all of us having the kōrero around the theme this morning. And we called this beyond programs, because no doubt all of us we're in this forum because I have a high passion and high involvement about what happens for Tamariki rangatahi in the communities and the places we live and work. And at the organisation I work for, Wesley Community Action, often a lot of our conversation about Tamariki, we talk about programs and parenting programs and all that, which are really valuable and have some really rich content in them. But often we focus on that, and we don't always have a focus on what happens outside the programs, in those spaces, in those gaps, in that area where whānau, hapori, where communities mingle and mix and things happen. So we sort of want to do a bit of an inquiry into that part of our mahi and that life in our communities and in our organisation. And when I was thinking about that this morning, I was sort of thinking, as we're all on here, I want to mihi to all of you and the child in each of us, because all of us have been children, and our childhood shapes who we are. Things happen in our childhood that we don't want today's children to experience that. And there's some things that happened in our childhood that we really want to create those opportunities and developmentally rich things for children. So we still carry that child within us. So I want to mihi to the tamariki in all of us and invite us to bring that inquisitive, childlike playfulness into this conversation. Because I think that's, for me, I think that's a clue that helps me be part of spaces with children and amongst them and make them rich. So that's just a whakaaro I put out there. Now we've got some slides Natalie's going to flick up, which is which is sort of some of the touchstones or some of the key core practices we talk about for child rich communities. And I'm sure you'll all be familiar with those. Maybe in your own organizations have different kupu words to sort of talk about those core practices, engagement, empowerment, connection, collaboration, relationship, rich, responsive. We may have different words in our own networks and place. Really, this webinar is an opportunity to sort of put some flesh on those bones, to embellish that. What does that mean or look like? And we do that through kōrero, through storytelling and that. So that's what the space this morning is. It's going to be shortly, Carla and Kiri are going to introduce themselves, and then each of them are just going to share some whakaaro, some thoughts about their own ideas about unpacking what beyond programs looks like in their mahi, where they are, and then the three of us will have a bit of a conversation, and then we'll have some breakout groups for each of us to sort of reflect on that, come back, pull that together, and then move on, bring it to a close. So that's the bit of the outline for our time this morning. And I'm going to sort of invite Carla. I should do a bit of this is community, so a bit of transparency. So Kiri is my daughter, and I'm her mātua. So there's a connection there. So a lot of the whakaaro we share, Kiri, I think it's those kitchen kitchen table conversations that we had over the years with the brothers and sisters and friends, you know, which hopefully those are child-rich places, the kitchen table. So I just want to sort of acknowledge, I don't know if it's conflict of interest, but it's, you know, it's, that sounds a terrible term, but it's a connection that we share. But Carla, just a brief introduction to yourself, and then Kiri, and then we'll pick up the kōrero.
Kia ora tātou, Tamariki David, ko unu ko o tapawai te maunga, ko wairau te awa, ko rangitani o wairau te iwi, ko omaka te marae, no namotu a hau, e mahi ana au I te pokapu o te hapori. So kia ora, ko Carla Moore a hau. It's really an honor to be with you guys today. I'm just so excited about this child-rich community and so inspired by the kaiako. Everybody sharing in the community is just being fabulous. So I can't believe I'm now one of them, because I'm actually just one of you guys as well, which is, I guess, part of being the community, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. We're all in this together.
And we're all experts, Carla. We all bring our expertise.
Yeah, and none of us
experience.
experts, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really nice segue, actually, David, because a lot of
I'm just going to pause and I'll just get Kiri to introduce herself,
sure,
and then I'm going to jump back to you, Carla. So,
Kia
ora, Kiri.
Kia ora tātou, he uri tēnei no Koterana me Cornwall, I heke mai o ku tupuna ki Aotearoa nei marunga I te Be Nevis me te Creswell, I tipu ake au ki raro I te maru o Remutaka, ki te taha o te awa kairangi, ki te pito o te whanganui ātara. Nā te tiriti o Waitangi au I whai tūranga waiwai, ki tēnei whenua ara he tangata tiriti ahau. Kia ora everyone. I'm descendant from Cornwall and Scotland. Grew up at the heart of Te Whanganui Ātara in Pitoone, under the shelter of Remutaka next to Te Awa Kairangi, and yeah, at that kind of heart of Te Whanganui Ātara, the harbour there. And just, yeah, acknowledging Te Tiritia Waitangi as the foundation for me calling Aotearoa my home, therefore acknowledging myself as a tangata tiriti. And yeah, like you, Carla, very excited to be here and just be having a conversation about something that I just think is absolutely critical for this time. And I think it kind of connects across all the things that we're seeing in the world today, and so just really excited to be part of this conversation and yeah, to be joining this movement and really going in the direction I believe that is really important for us to be going.
Kia ora, Kiri. And so already both of you have signaled the sort of the passion and the sort of the critical nature of whanaungatanga of tamariki whānau and those connections and that. And so, Carla, what I know you are a real activator and networker within the Taranaki community where you operate in and all that sort of stuff. And so, just really interested in just hearing some of your thoughts or insights around particular this idea about what happens out beyond the programs or in that other space, or what's your experience or hunches in that area?
Sure. Well, where do we begin, right? So the hunches in that area are that people are showing up to Flourish, for example. This is, what we see here, looking great, looking fabulous, looking happy, pushing their little baby in their buggy, walk in the door, and it doesn't take too long. There's a moment of a coffee and a touch on the shoulder, and there's this big unpack that happens, and it happens time and time again. And so people are showing up for a program because there is something up with their child. But of course, what we all know is behind all of that is there's definitely way more up with the matua, with the parents, with the mama, and the program is really, it has been an awesome gateway to get people in, but what we're needing more of is the walks in the park, the clothes swaps, the coffee groups, the board games, all the other pieces on the outside of what we're doing here at Te Pukapu or Te Hapori, about just being a space, being a constant place for people to be able to come to. That's what we're building up at the moment. So it's yeah.
I'm interested when you say like walk in the park, like yeah,
yeah, it's
tell a bit more,
complicated.
unpack that. yeah, that's sort of
really complicated. So David,
stuff.
every morning at 9:15 on Mondays, you're welcome to turn up. You can wheel your baby, you can push your baby, you've got your baby, your little one on the runner bike, or you just come for you. So the kaupapa around there is literally about nurturing. It happens to be usually the mama who turns up, but whoever is parenting that child, any child, anywhere in the world, can come and just be in the Ngāhere, because we're back onto the park right here at Flourish, Taranaki. And so we've got a beautiful park right in our back garden, which amazingly so many of our people never get to see more than just the little tourist loop of. So we take them on adventures out the back blocks of the park where we are immersed, just us, in the beautiful Ngāhere. And it's just kind of, if there's quiet, that's fine. If there's chat, that's fine. But we know the connection that happens in the Ngāhere it's just magic. So we talk, we walk, which is also the exercise that's great. And then we come back to Flourish and we just have a coffee and chat, and kids kind of sprinkle over the place, and whatever goes down. But we always start the walk with a check-in, how we're doing, how we're feeling. We know that if we're a bang on, we're awesome, and if we're a 5, we're kind of struggling. And so that just means our 5s have to pick up our 1s, and our walk is already sort of, it's okay to be a 5 on this walk. It's okay to be feeling a bit shit, a bit hoha, and inevitably by the time we've finished our coffee, people are leaving going, I look forward to seeing you next week. So the people we come getting along are very varied. So a lot of people who have just moved to Taranaki, who don't know anybody, who have no connection, or the people here who are trying to find a new flock. They kind of know that the people they're hanging with isn't really the parenting that they want to be doing. So how do they make a difference? How do they work out how to do this? We've got some people who are on waiting lists for certain things that are trying to get some help, but have nowhere else to go really. So they are very welcome. Just all sorts of ranges of people. So and that walk in the park it's so just beginning. Like it's the thing that's a really nice catch-all, and I know it's going to become a thing, but we're just holding space a bit. Some days there's 4 mama, some days there's 12 mama, but we're not. It's just building very slowly and gently at the moment, but as everything does in community.
Yeah, and I mean that's so powerful, so simple, and got a beauty. And it's sort of using, like you say, the existing space and the existing resources that you're really fortunate that's right on your doorstep. And it just sounds like, even it sounds like a reasonably recent thing that you're noticing shifts. I mean, and for the mātua that turn up, there's something's happening through that.
Yeah, and the fact that they come back and they then reach out to each other, right? So we've got a chat group that we just add people in invariably as soon as you walk through the door. So during the week they can still catch up with each other, just trying to build their own little community within, because actually what we're about here is trying to recreate the parenting village. That where's it gone? It's not there anymore. And this job was the toughest job in the world, and we're not supposed to do it by ourselves.
And that's interesting, because so often the phrase is said, it takes a village to raise a child. I think its origins originally was Africa, but probably most communities around the globe have some version of that wisdom.
But where's the village?
but we've almost, you've almost got to, it sounds like, create little informal bumping spaces, or it seems to be. And you said in the beginning too that often people come along because they've got a problem, and so there's a certain program. So there's the value of the program is often not the hook, but it's the stress point.
Yes.
Yeah,
it is. It'll be what pushes us to say, I actually need some help. It's not about me. I'm fine. I'll be okay. But my child's really struggling. And of course, it doesn't take much unpacking to go, actually, it's a really good reason why you're struggling. Life is tough right now. Like, it makes perfect sense. This is hard. So they can come in invariably almost all the time and say, my kid's not listening, whining, biting, hitting, shit of a kid. But I love him or I love her. You know, there's always that, you know, we always love our kids, but we're just being driven crazy. But we end up finishing off with, who knew it had something to do with me? Who knew if I could respond in a different way, things would be much easier in my home. It's not about changing my child, it's about changing my responses in my whānau. Yeah. So
So it's sort of like through that relationship, the dialogue sort of shifts or the focus broadens out more,
yeah,
or
it
just
really does. I think what happens is lights get turned on. So whether it's from each other, so it's not just us, we're definitely not the experts in this gig, because we are first and foremost saying, you know, I've got 4 kids and I'm still, there's nothing perfect about my life at home at all, ever. But it is about offering out to each other to offer that support and to talk with each other and to yesterday we had in our group in the morning, we had 4 of our mama in tears who come in fine, looking good. And it's just, they're all reaching out, putting arms around each other, and it's all just actually okay. And some of those tears are tears of joy, like, you know, a quick story. So one mama brushing her daughter's hair, saying, you know, she was wriggling and squirming, and usually she would have said, just sit still, and we would have had a big fight with her. This time she just stopped and she said, really looks like you don't want me to brush your hair. What's up? And the little girl just had a little cry and snuggled into her, and away she went brushing her hair. It was a 3-minute interaction. And so she was able to report back to the group, it worked, I did it, it was great. You know, it's just lots of little tiny stories like that, that if everybody had a little story like that every day, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say little story, but as you've, I think, communicated very powerfully, little story, massive, big shift, big impact, you know.
Totally.
So
Yeah,
this
100
whole
goes.
idea, what is little and big, gets all, we need to
Totally.
sort of hold that
What
lightly.
matters.
And I
Absolutely.
also like you sort of said that often, sort of you said like a light bulb moment or something triggers in them. And, you know, what I take from that, Carla, is actually a lot of that knowledge or that stuff is already in the mother, the father. It's actually there. It's just other stuff's buried it. So that, you know, rather than thinking I've got to go to an expert and learn or read a book. And yeah, there's a place for that. But it sounds like
that was another just briefly, that was just another one of those tear moments yesterday with another mama, when I said to her, you know your child better than anybody, you are an amazing mother. And she just burst into tears. And it's like, you know, she just needed some affirmation. She didn't need a, you know, 6-month counseling program. She just needed to be reminded her kid rocks. He's just having a hard time at school, you know. But
that simple, that powerful, that any whakaora, like in terms of the tamariki and the children, that it sounds like your place sounds beautifully chaotic, just the sense from talking with you, there's stuff happening here and all that. What do you know, how do the children act in that space? Where are they?
Well, that's a really great question, David, because our space is very interim at the moment. So we're very grateful to have the space that we do have. We're upstairs. So if you have accessibility issues, you can't come to see us. So our space is also limited in that we're sharing a space with a gymnasium downstairs. Anyway, the venue itself is not yet ideal. And so what we've done to cater for that is that our space upstairs is really about nurturing the mama and the papa. So our space at the moment is calm and it's relaxing and it's nurturing and happens to have children every now and then come into it, as opposed to being a child-centered space. So the vision is very much so that down or in another, when we get our proper venue, we will have a whole other space that is absolutely come on in, kids. So at the moment we have 4 big cardboard boxes, and inside our cardboard boxes are lots of really cool toys that we move these boxes around, and the kids build their playground as they come and go. But it means we can also push them aside, cover them up with a sheet, and the parent can say, this is the first time I've actually had some time for me. Which is actually equally beautiful. So it seems a bit ironic being in a child-rich community and not being all about the child. However, what we know is that if we can actually nurture and look after our parents, our children are so much better off. So we've had to start there. So Ask me that in a year's time, David, when we've got all this funding and all this amazing support. We'll have the place rocking.
I think it'll be happening in the park. I get the impression you'll just be out in the ngāhere. But I appreciate that, Carla, because I think being aware. Can you hear me?
Oh, can now.
Okay. I think being aware of the space and who's it designed for is actually a really important thing, rather than just assuming that adult space is accessible for everyone. And that. So look, a rich conversation there, Carla, and I'm just going to pivot and invite Kiri into this conversation, and just some of your thoughts, Kiri, from some of your experiences and that. And I know, just because I do have a little bit of a connection with you in terms of, some of the journey you've done with the Pickler approach and some of that sort of, I'm affirming and of how we show up for children and that. So just interested, some of your thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were two things that really stood out to me from what you shared there, Carla. Like, one is, I think actually it is all about the simplicity, almost like it's the simpleness of the things that what makes them so hard often. And I think it's very easy for us with programs and just in general life to kind of go into all of these fix things, and actually it's just about often slowing down, coming back, and it's finding those simple things, which ironically can be the hardest to do, but are also the most powerful. And the story you shared about the mother with the hair, because I think that for me is a really beautiful connection to what I see in the Pickler approach that we kind of are inspired by in our babies place and toddlers place workshops. And this is where I think it kind of connects with that beyond programs as well, because I think for me, like, programs like you shared as well, like, they're a really great opportunity to get people in through the door. They're a prime space for some of that explicit teaching when there really does need to be some things like that. But they often focus on what we're doing or what we're not doing and what we need to do. And while I think that's really important, what I think is a more potentially powerful question, and what I think connects with this idea of beyond programs, is that how are we doing things? How are we meeting our parents and our tamariki? How are we working with them? And so in that story of that mother with the child, rather than responding in that usual pattern habit that was there, she was able to, one, pause in the moment, which is a huge achievement, we would all know, and then two, go, hey, how am I going to respond to this? And in that, it opened up a whole new opportunity. So one of the things that that's kind of a big focus for us in our babies place and toddlers place mahi, is a lot of it is one, it's that setting up that safe environment for, it's designed for the baby and the infant. So you come in, everything's on the ground, everything's at child's level. And it's also taking in that consideration of mums, like, one of the first things we say to our whānau as they come in is, don't stress yourself out trying to get here on time. This is not a stress on your day. This is here to support you. If you are feeling like you are overwhelmed, you've had a rough night, like, the last thing we want is for this to be a stress for your morning. Give us a message if you can to let us know that either you're coming and you'll be late or you're not going to make it. But, so many of those things, so the program orientated deadline times, they don't work with our tamariki, and they don't necessarily work with whānau. Kids don't work on a timeline like that, and often they have to fit into the adult world. They're constantly being asked to timetable their life and schedule according to the adult's needs. And so I think that's a really important consideration with programs, is, are these programs in line with the child's needs? How are we making sure that they actually connect there, rather than just at a cost, And this is not easy stuff. This is like, yeah. And I think that's where it also connects to me as well, as the kind of moving from that what to how for me is going, when I think of child-rich communities, when I think of fostering and building that, I think of it as returning. I think it's a lot about unlearning, you know, like I think I would hazard that most Indigenous cultures around the world lived in child-rich communities, you know, like we just have to look at some of the whakatauki from Aotearoa here, from Te Ao Māori, and we can see that where the child was in the community and their most important place. So I think it's about unlearning probably, you know, colonial baggage that is where we have kind of lost our way, I would say, in terms of what is a child-rich community. So I think there's a lot of that kind of unlearning that has to go on, and that I think it's about cultural change, you know, like beyond programs. It's not just about teaching that what, teaching those, you know, I think of it in terms of trying to solve our global issues with technologies. Great, there's a place for that, an important place for that, but what we really also need is cultural change, value change. And I think that's what I'm saying, that's what I see with this child-rich communities, is that we need to be thinking about how we view children in our world. What value, how do we see them? What eyes do we see them with? Because I would hazard a guess that the mainstream, the dominant Western model of how we view children, how we see our tamariki, is not child-rich. You know, like that's why we get books called Terrible Twos, Taming Toddlers, you know, that is not a child-rich language. And what I see from Pickler, what I find Pickler and the work, maybe you're familiar with Penny Brownlee, has been doing in this area, is that it is, you know, there's a couple of really rich kind of principles or statements that connect strongly for me. And one is a child, infant, baby, toddler, child, young person is competent, capable, and equal human being. And this is what I mean by that simplicity. Like, yeah, that's a simple statement, but when you actually unpack it, when you actually look at your work and what you're doing and you go, what, like, that is so hard. Like, and let me just give you an example of that. Like, you know, and this is what we catch ourselves doing, you know, because it's unlearning. We don't realize how much we have been shaped by these things. You know, but so in our baby's place, you know, we'll have maybe, and this is it, you know, we'll catch ourselves, like we always, you know, when whānau come in, we greet mother and we greet child. Often it's mother, sometimes it's both parents. What we do, you know, we'll sometimes catch ourselves going, oh, we had 7 participants today. No, we didn't have 7, we had 14. You know, we had 7 parents and we had 7 babies. But that's the kind of thing, you know, like it's like that simple, and it's just it's just automatic. But actually when we go through, those are those deep level things of how do we view and how we valuing our tamariki. Another example is that kind of thing of how we, you know, how we talk with our children when they're in the space. Do we include them in the conversation? Are we going to go, oh yeah, they had a really bad sleep last night, so we're having it rough and did it, you know, like when we're an adult and someone talks about us like we're not there, that is so whakaiti, you know, like that is so dismissive. You know, that you can feel that. I can feel that already just talking about it. But if we can go, and this is what I mean, like it doesn't feel natural necessarily, it takes practice. It's definitely taken practice for me. But if I can go, you know, my nephew's a really good opportunity for this. Hey, you know, yeah, we didn't have a very good sleep last night. You woke up a little bit early, didn't you, Ra? And I woke up with you, and so we had a bit of a tough time getting back to sleep. So we're both feeling a little bit fragile this morning, but we're here and we're keen to give it a go, you know, like already just that inclusion, that language, that like, and these are the things, like I feel like they're so little and they're so, but I think this is what is leading us to that cultural change. And if we're the practitioners, or if we're the people who are working in these spaces, I think we are the models. we are the ones that need to be modeling this child-rich behavior, this view of our tamariki in everything we do throughout our programs, before they come onto our programs, in that meeting spaces, when they're signing up. If we're going to do home visits, how are we viewing the children when we go into that family, into their home, you know? Are we including them in the conversation, or are we just talking to the parents? If they, you know, like all of that stuff. Anyway, I feel like I'm just going on a little bit.
No, look, look, as you're talking, Kiri, you know, I don't know about other people's listening, but my mind ducks off to my own workplace and stuff. And sort of, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you know, in terms of the sort of assumptions we make collectively in terms of, and how we talk about children. And I'm here in Wellington City, and I can look at my window, and it's interesting. Like, I can walk through Wellington streets. Here's a whole place of thousands of people living, and I won't see a child. Or if I see a child, the child's contained within, locked in a buggy, because it's just not a safe place to have children. So the whole way we've designed our public space, I mean, that's just one whakaaro, you know, I can race off. But I think, and I like what you're sort of saying about, as practitioners, we model that. And I think, Carla, you know, that what you were, you know, when you talked to that mother, as you talked about the hair brushing, what was really cool was you were able to say to her, you were able to sort of affirm her and say how awesome you did that. And, you know, like, that's just reinforcing that is so, I mean, not only are you teaching it and modeling it, but also we're spotting it where that happens, and sort of, and giving the affirmation and say, how cool is that, you know? So it's that sort of, so I sort of think it's really cool because Carla and Kiri, you both, you know, shared a lot in very briefly that sort of begins to sort of unpack, what do we, when we say child rich, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What are we seeing and feeling as adults? And what would we hope the children are seeing? So let's have a little bit more of a, you know, just a little bit before we go into panel groups, sort of a conversation with the three of us, you know. And I'm just thinking, Carla, is there anything there that Kiri said that you think, oh, that's interesting, yeah, or that, oh, I connect with that?
Yeah, there's lots of stuff there, Kiri. I wish you were in Taranaki. Anyway, move on down. I just mentioning when Kiri, when you were talking about the stress thing not being a barrier of, you know, and one of our new, and we have called it a program because that is convenient for the world right now. We called it Te Mama, and our Te Mama program means that every Wednesday between 12 and 2, our mama can come and they have some kind of wellbeing session, which we've got a range of amazing practitioners that have volunteered their time, from yoga to meditation to talks on diet and whatever, anything to do with wellbeing across the whole term. But what we've had to do is also then create a childminding space, because one of the barriers is, well, I've got my child with me, and if this is about you, mama, we need you to be able to have this time. So we've created a childminding space that then has called for calling on the community to say, who wants to come hold a baby? So that's sort of built up. And then we get the questions saying, well, how many children are coming today? And we have to say, meh, who knows? How many mums are coming today, Carla and Katie? We go, who knows? And so, and you can see the practitioners going, well, hold on a minute, this isn't how we run our classes usually we have a booking system, and that's why we're sort of saying, pushing back and saying, that's why these mama can't go, because if they commit to that and then they have to pull out because they had a crap night or their child's not well, whatever reason, they feel stink, and so they would rather not say, I'm going to go do this thing for my own well-being, so they miss out. So so working around those barriers, it's not convenient.
That's
not
so
financially smart, but
I
it
think
is where we have to be.
totally. And I think you, like, that is so it, right? Because I also see that barrier with, I mean, funding, you know, like, how do you say that this is the people, your numbers you're going to get? Because life doesn't work like that. Families don't work like that. And there's another kind of phrase in the work I've done with Penny Brownlee and Pickler Institute that comes up that I think is just so powerful. And it's that our culture needs to match our biology. And I think what we have right now is that our culture doesn't match our biology. And we're doing a hell of a lot to try and change our biology or fix our biology, which, you know, we have natural consequences because we're not treating each other, humans, how we need to be treated. But what we actually needing is, if our culture matched and there was that understanding that, we need flexibility in this space because that's not how human beings work, then that would be an opportunity, you know? So I totally hear that.
And it's interesting just making the connection with the whole community development whakaaro and language. We often talk about bumping spaces and soft boundaries because we know in communities, this organic thing. Communities don't fit into rigid structures.
KPIs.
Okay, all that language, you know. So exactly. So if we're thinking we want to work in a community rich way, in a child rich way, then we have to develop ways where there's sort of pluralist, you know, the things absorb and move and shift. So Kiri, you know, the example about when you talk to the whānau about coming along to a program saying, listen, if you've had a shit night and you're going to be late, totally ticker. The last thing we want to do is create some initiatives that end up adding stress onto an already, you know, because we've created a way to be a world to be parenting which, as you say, Kiri, it doesn't match the biology of a developing pepe, or, you know, so we're trying to impose structure on it. So that's going to be stressful because the mother has to get the kid out the door. Carla.
The flip side of that, though, David, is also the concept of they don't come because they feel like they haven't got time to do their hair and get their shit together. When actually, if we can say to them, come in your nightie, like, I know you're not going to, but, you know, as you are is just fine. Then actually, because what they need more than ever is actually to get their butt out the door. They might just be half an hour late and they might arrive having cried for a while. But actually, if they know they're still safe to come into our space, late, disheveled, anxious, we're still great, you know, we love to see them, then that is a real win, I'd say. So it's not about don't come as you are when you can is gonna be actually just fine. But sometimes we do need to say, actually, you really need to get here. We're missing you. We really need to see you today because we know that otherwise they're going to be like rocking in a corner at home and it's not good.
And that's those social connections, and that's that relationally rich, and that's the invitation, the follow-up, the giving permission to be late, look shit, you know, like all that flexibility is what we need to foster.
It takes to maintain relationship and respect and trust, and that builds a long time, right? So we've got to sit in that space for a while before we get there.
And I think like the same is even like without, you know, especially in the baby's place where we're working with parents and infants, you know, like it's just so interesting. Like, you know, you've got baby will start crying and they'll be like, oh, I got to take them away. It's like, what? You know, if it's more comfortable for you, that's fine. You do what's more comfortable, but you don't need to leave. You know, babies are allowed to cry. Like, it's part of their nature. You're allowed to cry. It's part of our nature, you know? And it's that thing of like you've said, Carla, I've got a real clear sense from you, is that be as you are. Just be as you are. You don't need to show up with anything else, you know? And almost what it sounds like is what you do is you kind of strip away those things so that does come out in the mahi that you do.
Because if we can't,
same with our parents is that over time, and also they go, oh gosh, I don't have to be this perfect, you know, like we're all sitting here with our babies. We all don't know what we're doing sometimes. Man, you have that problem too. Oh my God, I have that problem. You know, like, what do you do about it? You know, and then you create that community resources and knowledge and shared experience to also foster and build understanding. And those are those kind of, really rich growth opportunities.
So, Carla and Kiri, I have a feeling we could got energy in this conversation to keep going on for quite a while, and there's cool stuff. And I'm just going to hit the pause button, and the rest of the people who are part of this, sort of more observing and listening to this conversation, we want to create some space now for the breakout groups. So so each of us are going to be allocated into a space with a group of people. So most of you will probably know the role now, where just spend some time to introduce yourselves, who you are, just to do that, to just a little bit of whanaungatanga in the group. We're saying 10 minutes in the group, and there's the questions. Thanks, Natalie. So this is the prompts, you know, so these are the guides. Often you get into breakout groups and you have a conversation about something totally different than what we ask about. Well, hiaha, That's all right. But that's the passion that's on top for you. That's tika. But what we're suggesting is thinking, what does a child-rich environment look like? Embellish that. What stories you've seen where it's happened that you feel your heart flutter when something happens in your mahi or in your place.
Back.
So hopefully that aroha mai, if we interrupted your conversations and you were just having a really rich flow and it was going, and suddenly the sort of sign comes up and says you've got 60 seconds and you're going to be merged. So apologies for that, but hopefully if you could exchange some contact details, those conversations can carry on. And what we want to do now is just briefly get a bit of an opportunity to sort of feedback, just some, and it's probably sort of, I don't know, some key one or two or three insights from those discussions. If someone from each of the groups just want to share that, I mean, not a big issue if that doesn't happen, but it'd be quite good for all of us to hear just an idea of the range of some of the whakaara. They may be related to those questions because we know we are highly organized and structured, or they may be something that was triggered by something else that Carla or Kiri mentioned. So I'm going to be really radical and I thought I'd go numerically, and hopefully you sort of know what group you were in. So good to see people sharing emails there. That's tika. So group number one, if you were in group number one, is there someone from that group that just wants to, and maybe we can just, Natalie, we don't need to have the slides up now. If we just sort of back to the sort of, and the person from group one, if you just want to sort of offer some of your thoughts or key points from your kōrero. Do people know who was?
I'm not sure we know which group's numbers we were in.
Yeah, I think we're. Talofa, my name is Lena from Italy. So David.
Kia ora, Lena. I sort of wondered whether any of the Wesley crew would jump on. That's
yeah,
cool.
Kevin's here too. He was in my group.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
Peter was in our group, 3 of us. We're just taking the patai question. Was pretty good. In our group, we took about the one, what does a child-rich environment look like? The group said safe environments, and also an environment that has toys and activities. What would a child experience, see, and feel with the safe environment and with toys? It will probably give them experience in problem solving, and also parents being involved in these activities. Also, thinking forward, these kids will feel comfortable in expressing themselves more, regulating and having activities and toys with family and things like that. I hope I got that right, Kevin and Lapita. Thank you very much, group.
Kia ora, Lena from the hood. So Waitangarua is the hood in that case. So awesome. So yeah, some beginning to sort of get some shape and feel about what it looks and feels like when we talk about child-rich. Group number breakout group number 2.
Hi, David. My name is Esty.
Kia ora, Esty.
I was in group number 2 with Kirsty. It was the 2 of us. We had a conversation, and I think probably I took it over a little bit, but there was some correlation. So I'm from the Manawatu Multicultural Council. I'm the Welcoming Schools Program Coordinator in the Manawatu, and it's actually part of the program of Palmerston North City Council's Welcoming Communities initiative, and it's a pilot project that we're running at the moment, basically just looking at, from a migrant and a migrant and a refugee perspective, what the experiences are that families are having when they enter the school system. So it's a lot about the challenges that those migrants and refugees face, entering into the school, and the challenges that the schools are facing as well. So obviously there's a lot to be said in that space. But if I just had to take maybe 2 things that came out of my and Christy's conversation, is on the one side, and this probably links a lot into what Carla said, you often find that the parents, and often the mum, struggle so much during the initial settlement process. Myself, I've migrated twice internationally with children in the last 6 years, and from a migrant parent perspective, it took me every single time a year before I started settling. So your initial settling period as a migrant, and I can imagine for a refugee, probably it would be even harder. As a parent, not being able to function or cope directly impacts your child. And I can think for the first year we lived in Qatar, my daughter was 11 months, and then for a year, I don't have a memory. I don't know what I did with my child for a year. So I think from a migrant or a refugee perspective, to be able to be linked into a community, I think that is probably a big challenge, because how do we find out about these communities where we can go and interact and get support? And even as a migrant in New Zealand for the first year, I never knew of such communities, so it's probably access to those communities. That's very important. And then from Kirsty's point of view also, I mean, she works with the kids in an extracurricular component or aspect where the parents often are there as well. The importance of having those activities for the parents too. So for the parents to be able to engage, not just sitting there waiting for the kids to finish whatever activity that they've signed up for the day. So again, it's probably very parent-centered. And I don't know how much time I have, but what I'll do is I'll put my name and my contact information, my email address on the chat. If there's anyone in the group that resonates with what I, for instance, just said in terms of a migrant refugee perspective, please pop me an email. It's a pilot project, and we're continuing into year number 2, hopefully from May onwards. And we really want to find out what's going on in New Zealand and, who's doing something similar.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Esther. About it's all about making connections. So making that offering and putting your details.
Yeah.
This is a network. This is not an organization.
Yes.
This is about linking and communicating. And so I think thank you for doing that. And I think that's it's lovely to know that some local governments have got enough foresight to think intentionally about that welcoming. And I have a hope that if this sort of child-rich stuff was happening, one of the outcomes of that is people who are new to Aotearoa and are coming with sorts of challenges, be they language or trauma for where they're from, they would find it easier to have soft connections and build those relationships. So
absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Esther. And group number 2, and you are a lucky group. There were just the 2 of you, so that's rich. So, group number 3. Does someone know if they were group number 3?
Hello, I'm Teresa. I think I was in group number 3.
You are now, Teresa.
We talked about the child-centered versus child-rich community, and that child-rich community and what environment and what that would look like. So it was same as what other people said, that physical environment that's safe for the children, and that then flows on to the parents as well. It just decreases their stress. We didn't get onto the second question, but Te Hora and Dunedin here.
-5.
Yeah. They mentioned that they have a parents group and they take away all the barriers, and it's awesome that they actually go and pick up the parents and they have the car seats in the car, just getting rid of that barrier, because there's no car parking around where they have their play group, and they provide lots of toys and good things for children just to run around and do what they want, and then support for the parents. So yeah, that was
cool. And I really like you picked up that the language thing about child-centered and child-rich, because language, often embedded in language, is a lot of assumptions. Like as Kiri talked about our dominant culture. Personally, I have a thing about when we talk about whānau-centered and child-centered, because I almost have this image of we put the child in the middle and all these people are looking at the child as if, they're in the center. And it's, in my view, it sort of feels like over pressure. But that just may be my bias. We all have.
Yes, one other person mentioned also like a walking bus, but doing a cycling bus to school, and the barriers to that. The kids wanted to do that, but the council wouldn't change their rules. There were rules about not biking on the footpath and stuff. So there were barriers within government agencies.
So we come up those little sort of regulations and policies and all that sort of stuff that sort of push up against this idea of child rich. So that's, I mean, that's quite an interesting one down the track in the Child Rich Community Network. It would be to talk about people from planning or regulations about what are ways around those barriers, because any barrier can be negotiated if we can find the right people to shift it or something like that, and with the creativity within our network. So kia ora, Teresa, from number 3. So group number 4, Wha, Toropo Wha.
Hello.
Greetings.
Greetings. I am Merlin. I am a farm worker at Kōrero Family Services Trust, Hamilton. And my group, I belong to the number 4 group. And I was able to meet Helena, Margie, Sherry, and me. And our organization is a child center organization. We do home visiting. And what we have talked about, the first question is to really give attention and really have to ensure the safety of the kids, of the children, by guiding them and embracing the cultures of each one, and also reading the cues of the child. As we go on home visiting, we tend to, the kids, they lead us what they want, so giving them space, but we really also wanted them to have that daily routines, not that is a structured one, but if it needs flexibility, we read their cues, because they're the one leading the parents, but ensure that their daily routines is still there, because that is the main. We need to give the children the space for them to flourish on their 4 domains: emotional, social, physical, and the spiritual. That's our group.
Oh, look, kia ora, Madeline. That's really helpful insight, because you brought the whole thing about the role of adults is to hold the sort of space, the boundary, you know, and that's partly the routine, and all that structure helps. And then there's this freedom and flexibility within that for the children. So thank you. That's very, very rich. Group number 5.
I think that was us. Kia ora, I'm Mindy from Te Tamariki.
Kia ora, Mindy.
We talked mostly about how to weave the voice of children, or the experience of children, into our places and spaces, and those moments, and how observation is probably a strong path for the strongest way we have of hearing what children want. I shared a story about community gardens, and that the community gardens in the hut are not being designed with kids in mind. So basically they walk up to a raised garden bed and can't see the veg. But then I remember my 3-year-old nephew coming into my veggie garden in his dinosaur phase, when he thought he was a dinosaur, and he would walk around the garden biting the tops off all the food. And that was how he learnt his vegetables, was by being a dinosaur in my veggie garden. So there's no way he could have explained to me what was going on, but in witnessing that gives, when we pay attention, we don't know. When we pay attention, we can learn. We don't need to ask. It doesn't need to be verbal. That's what we talked about.
That's cool. I think I'm going to hold on to this image of a little boy nephew acting as a dinosaur, picking the tops off the vegetable garden. I think that's a really nice little visual little picture I have in my mind. And as you say, about just noticing, observing and pausing, seeing what they're doing, where they're at, and just they're communicating a lot. So thank you, Minnie. That's also really rich. 5. So I think the last group is 6. I think we only had 6 breakout groups. Does someone think, oh, maybe I was group 6? Really cool insights, team, just all the expertise and knowledge that sits in all your practitioners and the network.
Megan and Mel and me. we didn't actually kind of nominate anybody, but I'm
That's
happy
right.
for you both to join me.
Kia ora, just
Kia ora. Yeah.
kia ora,
So,
Amanda. Yeah.
hi. So we were quite organic. We didn't really stick to the questions so much, but kind of just tossed lots of ideas around. And Megan, I don't know if you want to jump on and talk about that example.
I don't know, Mike, just
yeah,
say your little bit, Amanda, and then we'll move it along. But that's okay.
yeah.
Thank you for
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I've just been pinged so much around lots of the whakaaro and the kōrero, and yeah, just how difficult structures are. And I was thinking, what would a child-rich learning environment look like in schools? Whether that's even possible, I don't know. But I talked about the example of my my now 17-year-old, but back when in primary school, and he's on the autism spectrum. And when he was feeling overwhelmed, he would just take himself under a desk, and he would come out when he was ready. And I loved the environment of the teacher setup, which was there was no comments, it wasn't a thing. It was just, he was allowed just to be who he was in that moment. And I'm guessing that, doesn't necessarily work for all children, because, but yeah, just, it was kind of like, is it even possible to have a learning place like a school which could be child rich? And I think also Megan talked about the importance of, we were kind of talking a lot about young people, children, babies, younger children, but what about our teenagers and our rangatahi, and particularly for those living in quite isolated environments, where are the spaces that they can be themselves and flourish and all of those things, and what would that look like? We don't know really. We just tossed kind of and kind of wonderings out there. So that was kind of
as in the beginning when I invited us to bring our child into this conversation, I think wondering and playful and exploring, looking under rocks, and that is something that's really good for us as adults to do with each other when trying to share knowledge and that. So, and I just think it's lovely that your son, when he was at school, had a teacher who had enough confidence and wisdom to set up the space like they were able to do for your son. That's a cool story, and I thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So look, that's just a really quick little summary of just some discussions, and each of them in a sort of an embellishing of this idea of, in that beyond programs and in that bumping spaces, how do we show up? How do we be and in that space that actually enriches the caregivers, the parents, and the children, and all that sort of stuff. So what we're going to invite you to do now, I think we've done this in other webinars, and this is just, sometimes it's quite helpful to sort of try and anchor this sort of saying, well, based on this discussion, there's one little idea, there's one thing. It may be that Carla talked about the walk in the park. I'm going to think about, I'm going to take that idea and talk about that with my colleagues. So what I invite you to do now is, in the chat function, just have a little moment to just sort of pause and reflect what you've heard from the breakout groups or from Carla or Kiri or any of the discussion, and say, here's one little step I'm going to do, or little action I'm going to take. Keep it realistic, small and simple, and then just type that. Don't push the enter button yet, but just type that into the chat function. And so take a moment to do that. So what's something that an idea someone else said that you're going to explore, do, try, play with? Type it into the chat function. And then shortly, I'm just going to go back to Carla and Kiri and ask them for just any sort of observations or comments. So what I'm going to suggest people start to do now, if they've typed that, and Cherie, I see you've got hand up there, you've got a question. Maybe if you've got a question, type it in the chat box as well. So if you've thought about one thing you'll do, one little step or something, initiative, maybe if we just go to the full screen, Natalie, and just hit the enter thing and just put those, see what comes through. And if you click on the chat function, you'll see well, what we'll do is they may come through, you know, you've got one there about set up an opportunity, urban planners and designers to hear the conversations. So that's just, that they will tick through. And while those are just sort of coming through, because someone else's idea might give you an idea in that. So that's good sort of pollination of ideas, cross-pollination. Carla, Kiri, is there anything just out of this conversation this morning, either what you've heard in the breakout groups or just any other sort of whakaaro that's sort of sitting there for you?
Yeah. Yes, there's tons. I just want to mihi to Mindy, actually, when we pay attention, we don't need to ask. I love that, Mindy. That's really, really cool. And that's just sort of a beautiful touch point there, I think. I do want to add in a really important piece that we're working on and building with Flourish, and that is about all the people that make this actually a full community. So it's like I mentioned, our service providers that are coming and offering the yoga and meditation. It's also all our service providers come and meet regularly at Flourish, and they're all talking about the whānau that they're all helping. And so we're creating this space because our child is at the centre. In order to do the best we can for that child, we need to enable and connect as much as we can with everybody else who's working in that community. And so that's a really big important, and it's not only us asking of that, it's actually makes everybody feel better, and it's a way that everybody can actually contribute and help. And because all those service providers who might be social workers or might be whatever mahi they're doing, they're actually also often parents. And so if we can mihi to that and them as well, like you did with us about our child, we can say to them, you know, yes, you're doing amazing work, but actually you've got kids as well at home. And when we all do this together, it becomes a community response. It's not just up to us. It's actually the guy at the petrol station. It's actually, you know, it's everybody. If we all care about how we talk to each other and how we talk to our kids, suddenly the world is a much better place. And it's
that's cool, Carla, because I also so important, because that's unpacking this whole idea of the village. Because also, like, we talk about service providers, and that's one group, but like you say, it's the local garage, it's the local dairy, it's the local businesses, it's the people who are in the old folks home. That's the community that is the village, you know. And so there's some you know, television and adverts do some powerful little adverts about connections between children and a dairy owner or something like that, and it's really powerful. But how do we emulate that in our cool? Thank you.
Because just briefly too, it's just interesting when we're looking at, obviously the funding is an issue for everybody, but when we go out to our community and they say, well, we don't have anything to do with parenting, and then we say, so do you not employ parents on your staff? And they go, oh, gulp, you know. So it's kind of, actually we all need to take some responsibility for this. That's
cool. Kiri.
I mean, I tautoko what everyone said, and it's just been so lovely to have the opportunity in this conversation to sit back and also just listen to the sharing that has taken place. And it's just been really nice to affirm, I guess, for me, in that just hearing stories and reflections and observations from different areas all around the country, different sectors, different spaces of work, all passionate and interested about this kaupapa. So I'm just that's one of the big things I'm taking with me today, is kind of my filling up, and being like, like you say, I mean, this is the beginning almost of that village as well. And I think, like you said, Carla, like, we can't do it on our own, and it's about getting all of the people on board. So I'm definitely just appreciative and grateful, and going to be taking that with me today.
Thank you, Kiri. And so I just want to begin the process of drawing to a close our hour and a half together. Yeah, it's gone really quickly. And I just want to sort of acknowledge and appreciate each of you taking time out, because there are pressures and demands, and hopefully by just listening and sharing and noticing and being inquisitive, you know, you've enriched some your understanding about what a child-rich community could look like. And and this is sort of just like a movement. This is just like a network of us all in our own place, our organizations, our streets, our neighborhoods, beginning to, you know, give some more intentionality about this, the focus of this movement. You'll see online there's a quick poll we want. Your feedback, this as a movement operates through a flow of information. So your feedback on this poll just helps us, if you can just do that. And then what we'll also make available is a survey monkey that can be sent afterwards, or you can stay online to do that. Natalie's going to put up, which gives us some more feedback. And that helps us design or shape future events like this for the Child-Rich Community Network. So we really appreciate if you can provide some feedback to the network on that. If you've got any comments or questions, there's an email address that we'll put in there. There's the link for the Survey Monkey in the chat thing, which also will be emailed out. kiora@childrichcommunities.org.nz. Any whakaaro, any thoughts, any questions, concerns, whatever, we're really keen to hit your feedback. The next one of these online kōrero is going to be on the 25th of May using the digital format. But Carla, do you just want to do a little quick shout out about
Yeah, it'll be exceptionally quick because we don't know too much yet, but watch this space. So Taranaki, Katie and I, and Mel and Renee, who are also on this chat, and we're going to be bringing the child-rich communities to Taranaki. So you out of towners, what a great chance to come and see us here at Te Pukapu or Te Hapori. Come and visit us here at Flourish. So we're going to be hosting the next child-rich communities hui here. Got such an exciting thing and date that I just can't tell you about right now. But but
it's going to make WOMED look real small.
Yeah, like, oh my goodness, I know. And it'll be a midwinter extravaganza. So great reason to come to Taranaki. Bring your skis. So yeah, so watch this space. So as soon as we do have some dates and a theme, the theme is very much bubbling in our minds at the moment. So we're pretty sure that it's building on a lot of the platforms that we've just been touching base on. So do look out for it. And
so there'll be an email go out to the network when a little bit more of that shape and that there, but that's just the quick thing. It's going to happen. And I think there was one in Otautahi in Christchurch last year, which is a really cool. And there's been one in Auckland. So it's really cool to have one in that Taranaki region for people in that part of the motu. So I see Katie is there as well, your colleague, and she's
Katie, yep.
Katie's all geared up. So yeah, so that's if you can do the survey, that's appreciated. Appreciate your time. We opened with a karakia, and Kiri opened with a karakia, and I'm just going to invite Carla, if you would like to sort of close off this hui together.
I'm going to do this quickly, but I really, really encourage you all to take this one and really think about it, because it's beautiful for this kaupapa. Ma te rongo ka mohio, ma te mohio ka marama, ma te marama ka mātou, ma te mātou ka ora, te hei Māori ora. So it's everything that we're all about, really, right? So when we've got listening, we've got awareness, we've got understanding, we've got knowledge, we just feel so much more confident and competent. So te hei Māori ora, kia ora.
Te hei Māori ora. And ka kite, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Ka mihi Carla, kōroa ko Kiri.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, David.
Kia ora, David.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, kia ora. Ngā mihi nui.
And ngā mihi Natalie for doing all the background work
Yeah.
and sort of getting us on the breakout groups. That's really important. So thanks, Natalie.
It's funny watching everybody leave. Bye, see you soon, Katie.
Yeah. I wondered whether there were going to be any Wesley crew on there. So we've got
Oh,
Lena and
nice.
Kevin. So
That's cool.
cool. See you, Lena.
There's
And Liberta is the mysterious Liberta who's
I think they were in there twice. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I can remove them now. Remove.
so well done, team. I sort of felt like it was sort of really cool. I mean, each of those breakout groups, you know, had a different sort of point, or you know, all quite diverse, but all connected. So I thought, you know,